All right, a couple of days ago when we last spoke to presidential candidate Ben Carson, he intimated this day was coming. That day is now. We are hearing from Ben Carson aides that two top ones are leaving. This from the now former communications director, Doug Watts, who tells Fox, and I quote, "Barry Bennett and I have resigned for the Carson campaign effective immediately. We respect the candidate. We've enjoyed helping him go from far back in the field to top-tier status." They go on to say, having just announced raising $23 million in the fourth quarter, more than any other Republican candidate, and passing 1 million contributions and over 600,000 unique donors since March. We're proud of our efforts for Dr. Carson, and we wish him and his campaign the best of luck. Now, these were among the gentlemen who were talking about how important it was for the candidate to sort of rev up his octane and respond to attacks or show a little bit more, I think they call it something in vinegar, but to show a little bit more passion on the stump and a little bit more aggressiveness. Ben Carson at the time saying he's not that kind of guy. He's not the kind of guy to go negative, and he won't change who he is. But does this indicate that maybe that could be changing? We've got reaction now from, who do we have here? We have Vince Coglianese. He is in D.C. Of course, Eboni Williams is right here, the Democratic strategist, Fox News contributor. Eboni, what do you think of this?
Well, you know, we were talking in the break, Neil, the people that like Dr. Carson, although he's not polling where he once was over the summer, those numbers have gone down tremendously, and we definitely know some reasons as to that. But the people that like him still like him. I think he connects on an emotional level.
They still give him money.
And they still are going to give him money because of that, because it's something that they actually believe in. You know, they don't just, he doesn't have supporters. I think Trump has fans. I think Ted Cruz has supporters. I think Dr. Carson has believers. And I think that type of thing is why we're seeing that fundraising number not really changing.
You know, the dichotomy between the two is amazing to me, Vince, that he raises all this money. It's close to double what Ted Cruz or Jeb Bush have been raising in the quarter, and yet all the attention certainly is on to Ted Cruz, maybe not so much Bush. Explain the disconnect to me.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the poll numbers. We saw Ben Carson has slipped dramatically from his one-time near lead, and he's now considered an afterthought in many of these states.
So how's he getting all this money?
Because he's got, as we just were talking about, he's got this loyal following that emanates out of the fact that I think in some ways he's a foil to the personal attack politics of Donald Trump. He's a guy who gets up on stage, refuses to engage in it, sort of soft-spoken. He's well remembered for going to that prayer breakfast and giving Obama a really rough time on Obamacare. And I think Ben Carson has sustained this political moment that he embraced at that prayer breakfast for quite a while. I think today's indication, despite all that money coming in, no matter how much money you have, if it's not well managed and if there's not a good sense of how to move the campaign forward, it's going to be wasted. And ultimately, I think you're beginning to see now, at the end of this year, the beginning of a substantial winnowing in the Republican field is just around the corner.
You know, Eboni, if you look at time awarded candidates in debates, and they all complain about it, 2 weeks from today, there's the Fox Business debate, and the argument that a lot of Ben Carson devotees have raised is, why doesn't he get the time? And we've actually crunched this down. He doesn't generate the broadside returns, the nasty follow-ups, because he doesn't say nasty stuff. No. So I don't know what to glean from that outside of his aides apparently recommending that he get more in the face, but that's not his style.
It's not his style. I actually don't think that he should go there, Neil. I think that is not, that would read inauthentic, and I think, again, to those believers that are consistently going to support him and give him money, that's going to cause a disconnect from even them. So this is the other thing. He didn't get a lot of time in the first Fox News debate either, but by the closing statement and the couple of minutes that he did get were powerful enough to kind of propel him from minute to sin. So my point only is that it's not about the lack of time that Dr. Carson's get, it's what he's doing with the time he does have, and we've seen that kind of decline over the course of this campaign cycle.
Doesn't he need then to put the emphasis then on his ads and maybe pointing out in the ads what he prefers not to do either on the stump or at a debate? What do you think, Vince?
I think Iowa is where he needs to compete. He needs to spend a lot of money on advertising there. He needs to appeal to evangelicals.
So not New Hampshire has a better shot in a state like Iowa.
I think so, especially because New Hampshire seems to be a bastion of sort of the establishment candidates where these guys are fighting, despite the fact, by the way, that Donald Trump right now is set to clean all of their clocks in New Hampshire unless things change dramatically.
Do you buy that Trump does?
I think Trump is going to be the guy for New Hampshire. Here's why. It's a very independent state. 40-some% of their electorate there is independent, registered independents like myself, and they do tend to go for either the Bernie Sanders or the Donald Trump candidate in this primary. It's not going to be an establishment play pool for them.
So if you guys look at the candidates, if you're not in the top 3 in New Hampshire, you're in trouble, right?
Big trouble, I would say.
What do you think, Vince?
Yeah. I think that's true, and a lot of that has to do with not only the momentum implications,
right.
It has to do with the delegate threshold, the very practical political reality that if you're not in the top tier of the candidates coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire and all of the states that lead up to Florida, you just simply won't have enough delegates to become the nominee of the Republican Party. And that's what these establishment candidates are hoping to do. Whether or not they beat Trump in New Hampshire, that's a big question. If they do, that's great for them. But they still can get delegates to add to their sum total as they move forward into states that are not quite so keen on going specifically for Donald Trump. And we may see a long process as a result.
Yeah, my own view, I've looked at the math here. I don't think anyone will have the delegates necessary going to Cleveland, so we could have a broker convention, but I could be wrong. I seriously doubt I'm wrong, but I could be wrong.
Neil wrong?
Yeah,
no,
doesn't happen.
I don't think so.
Of course not.
Okay.
Guys, thank you very, very much.